You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
One more time. Welcome in and welcome all. Another episode of the Locked On Hawks Postcast. It's me, DeShaun Tate, joining you on the evening. Unfortunate set of circumstances. You guessed it, 127-113 loss for the Atlanta Hawks. Couldn't quite get past those pesky Portland Trailblazers on the evening. Of course, we got a nice show lined up for you guys on tonight. Of course, we'll dip and dive into a little bit of one of my favorite foods. I guess it technically has a little bit of a different meaning to it. We'll talk about that in the first segment. Cut to a break. On the other side of the segment, we'll talk a little on the other side of the break. We'll talk a little bit about a little bit of Atlanta Hawks April Fools, considering it kind of fits the narrative and fits the day, April Fool's Day, of course. So we'll talk a little bit about a little Atlanta Hawks playing a little April Fools on us HawksNation and Hawks fans. And then last but certainly not least, a little bit of plus off the pine coming off of the bench. We'll talk about all of that and more. But before we dive right on into it, of course, we got to make sure we do our part, letting everybody know that today's Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I want to dive right on into it because this was one of those games that's just clearly been a little bit frustrating. I feel like the Hawks have clearly started trending back towards the consistently inconsistent purgatory. And you've especially been living under a rock. You've heard me and Tanisha talk quite a bit about the consistently inconsistent play of the Atlanta Hawks, which it feels like much this year we hadn't gotten to a point where we had to use that term a whole lot. Now, obviously, that being a little bit more of a conversation, especially basing it off of and judging off of tonight's loss. But I want to start off here because, you know, when you have these instances where you have players for the Atlanta Hawks, and, you know, of course, we love to talk about the positivity and we love to talk about the optimism. Players like Onyeka Okongwu, for example, coming into the game. You're looking at the month of March being the first day of April. In the month of March, he's one of only 3 players to record over 200 plus points and 150 rebounds. Cool. Got it. Like, I want to knock the cute stuff right off the back, because I want to get into some of the other stuff. More cute stuff, you ask. Trae Young on the season, 800 plus assists this season. Did himself a fine job on tonight with having, I think, 15 assists, which is pretty strong. I know we tend to get spoiled sometimes by some of the special play by Trae Young, and Shaedon Sharpe on tonight, which is one of those things that was kind of like a thorn in the side. Didn't get a chance to see him in any of the meetings on last year, but of course, between both meetings this season, 30 plus points for him in the last 2 meetings. And it's embarrassing that we even have to get to a point where we even have to have these conversations, especially and specifically against those teams that are some of the worst in the NBA, right? I mean, we've seen that earlier this year with, I think it was the Washington Wizards in back-to-back games. I think we've seen it also in back-to-back games against one of the worst teams, not only in the NBA, but also within the Eastern Conference, that being the Toronto Raptors. A couple of teams that we anticipate will have arguably, you know, possibility, realistic shots, let's just say that, at the number 1 pick in June's NBA draft, maybe diving into the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. I don't know. But I will say enough to say that when you're looking at this Portland team, right, a pretty good team defensively, not a bad team defensively, or just has taken some steps, right, in the right direction. Baby steps, maybe, but certainly have taken some steps in the right direction on the defensive side of the ball. But it's hard to ignore that in their own division, in the Northwest Division, in the Western Conference, they are 4th out of 5th. Out of 5 teams, they come in 4th. In the Western Conference specifically, they check in 12th out of 15 teams. In the NBA, if you're going off of increments of what, 10, are they in that 1 to 10 range? No. Are they in that 11 to 20 range? No. They're the 22nd team with the, I guess, would say 22nd team with the best record, but they're within the bottom 10. How about that? Bottom feeders in the NBA, checking in at 22nd out of 30th. And I guess kind of when you're looking at tonight's game, some of the things that was kind of unfortunate for the Atlanta Hawks, we're so used to them getting out on the break, and we have so much optimism and positivity that we like to share about the Hawks in terms of its fast break points, because they're one of the best teams in the NBA in terms of pace. Got outscored in transition 28-25. And I'll tell you a little bit more later as to why in our what we'll be talking about segment, right, as to what adds fuel to this fire that has me so, I guess, just sure upset, sure peed off, sure just underwhelmed, maybe is the word, but I feel like it's a little bit more than that. We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't know who you think you will be when you have 20 turnovers in a game. Me and Tanisha oftentimes talk about the three-point shooting, how abysmal that is. We oftentimes talk about the free throw shooting, the three-point shooting, how atrocious that is. But something that I feel like has been a more consistent problem than anything. I mean, free throw shooting on tonight, 85%, right? Typically, you shoot 85% for this Atlanta Hawks team from things that we've seen in recent history, and they come away with a win. You shoot that well from the free throw line. That's how bad or how much they really needed to make sure that they have been converting from the charity stripe, from the free space on the bingo card, as I like to call it. But when you have 20 turnovers, I don't know who the hell you think you're going to beat. You're not going to beat your rival. You're not going to beat your worst enemy. You're not going to beat certainly no team in the NBA. I know it's a bit much, and I know it's a reach. You got 4 teams playing for the Final Four coming up this weekend. 20 turnovers, I don't feel like you're going to be able to beat those guys. And of course, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but yet still, my point still remains that it's beyond not a good look now. Like it's realistically a feel, right? Let's just say the vibe, the energy, the feel that you can't even go and beat the local community church league down the street with 20 turnovers. You can't even beat the YMCA team, right? A community league team with 20 turnovers. That's something that they've got to factor in and focus on really getting fixed, because as I always say, because this has clearly been a consistently inconsistent team, you go out there, you beat the Golden State Warriors, you turn around and you lose over here. You turn around and you beat the Milwaukee Bucks, but then you mess around and you lose over here. It's so much up and down roller coaster ride with this team so often that you don't know what things. And I'd be interested to hear from any of you guys if you want to jump in on the comment section. I'd be really interested to find out from any of you guys in which what areas or departments that you believe that you can count on every single night. Put the positive twist on it. What you feel like you can count on every single night. If I don't know nothing else, I believe that every single night I can pretty much all but guarantee that I'm going to get this from this Atlanta Hawks team. What is that this for you? Right? Appreciate Moody for jumping in and coming on through. A consistently inconsistent team. It's 41-41, which is where I think that the Hawks will meet. And that only makes sense. And to be honest with you, where are they now? 75 games in, or not? About 75 games in now. They've won probably about somewhere between 36 and 38 games, whatever. Being able to walk away with 3 out of the next, where are we looking at now? 7 games. And that might even be a stretch. Like, I don't even know how confident that I can say that I feel about that. And we'll get to that here in a sec. We'll get to the other stuff back here in a second, but that just makes for a very good point. Now it's got me really kind of thinking, who are these next games at this point? I mean, realistically, I think that we are looking at, let's see here. Wow. Yeah, it's literally getting to a point where it's like legit just that bad. The Mavericks up next on the road. Injuries. But one more game than the Atlanta Hawks. I guess that can technically go either way. The Hawks play better on the road typically, but yet still that's not something I feel that confident in. The Knicks coming up after that. There goes that rival that we were just talking about. You got the Jazz. Please don't lose to the Jazz. The Jazz is doing any and everything that they can to make the perfect fit, for which I think most people would all agree that they'll, that they're in the sweepstakes for Cooper Flag. No questions asked. Can't lose to them. They've got 60 losses on the season. They're 16-60, not 60-16. Got Orlando, who we're right there in fighting position for, to be able to pretty much going to have to meet up and match up in the, in the playoffs, or to make it into the playoffs to play in, right? You got to match up against the Nets on the road again. We saw what happened the last time that they played the Nets. Got the Sixers after that, which should be a win. And then you close out with the Orlando Magic again. I'm not really sure that I feel confident saying that, the Hawks will break even, let alone certainly will be able to win 2 games. Can't afford to lose. I think that's going to ultimately be the deciding factor when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks season this year, right? That's going to teach me a lot, is how they handle those last 2 games against Orlando, because this isn't going to be one of those teams where it's like, we don't have anything to play for. We're already a lock, or I guess a lock for the play-in, but we're already in position to make our run. Like, they're still trying to make a point. They're still trying to get hot so that they can, put it all together, put all the pieces together to the puzzle at the right time. And the Atlanta Hawks are standing in their way. Remember, that's a team that's returning a lot. Sure, they haven't been the same team that they were last year, but returning a lot from the team that was a 6 seed last year, and I think went 7 games in the first round, or did they win their first round game? Regardless of the fact, I know the Hawks weren't anywhere to be found, and with the Hawks not trending in the right direction, it feels like a recipe for disaster to me, if I'm just being really transparent. Appreciate you, Moody, for jumping in and showing some love. I thought that just made up a really good point, saying that the Atlanta Hawks will go 5-2. Not sure about that, but we'll keep our fingers, toes, eyes, T's, and everything else crossed that that will be the case for our Atlanta Hawks team. But I want to finish up here because there's a couple things that kind of stuck out to me a little bit like a sore thumb in regards to this game. By the way, Danny Avdija, who just couldn't get his footing together and right when he was in Washington, found a way for the Atlanta Hawks, who defensively couldn't do anything. I mean, if you're going to let some guys go off, that's probably going to be Shannon Sharp, right? We already talked about the 30-plus points and so on and so forth. Ridiculous athleticism, in which, I think that the Hawks really need to try to do their best to prevent him from gaining some confidence. He's a run starter within himself, and he's a run finisher too, by the way. And we'll talk about that in the next segment when we discuss how the Hawks played an April Fool's joke on us tonight. But, I really felt like you needed to beware of the Banton as well. Banton, I think, was an X factor and has been all year long for this Portland Trailblazers team, with his athleticism, with his energy, with his confidence, and just being the guy that's just flying around all over the place. In addition to, because we saw some of that tonight, that was Danny Avdija. Now, of all 20 points, right? In 23 of 26 minutes played, he had 20 points, 10 rebounds, went for a double-double. On the night, 32, 15, 10 assists, 7 turnovers, okay? But even more impressively, he led all players with 5 offensive rebounds. One of the top number one things that I always say that this team, and no team in the sport of basketball for that matter, can really afford to allow, and we know it happens from time to time, but with all the pieces missing, you can't afford, especially front court players, you can't afford, when you're this dominant team in the paint, you can't afford from a even from a scoring standpoint, points in the paint on tonight getting outscored. We know how the Atlanta Hawks predicate their success off of their points in the paint, 66-58. You cannot afford to let this guy go off the way that he did from an offensive rebounding standpoint. That is also what ultimately wins you the game. We talk about the three-point shoot, but the turnovers, the offensive rebounds, and the money that you make at the charity stripe. This was a team that needed to play with pride tonight. And that, it just so happens to be something that they just did not do. And not to overthink it. And that's something else I felt like they were doing. They played like they were overthinking the game. I feel like they got to a point where they just didn't take the Portland Trailblazers serious, then made up their mind that they want to take the Trailblazers serious, and then all of a sudden just couldn't put it all together at the end. And I feel like that's exactly why they lost this game, is because when you start a game and it appears that you're not taking the team serious, it's too hard of a hole for you to dig out of because you're mentally just defeated in so many ways. And when you're playing catch up and you finally catch up, it's inevitable sometimes that you'll fall back behind because of the way that you started the game. We'll talk about that here on the other side of this break. Again, I appreciate you guys for jumping in with us and joining. And we'll talk a little bit about this April Fool's joke, and that's a perfect way to kind of segue and transition into that right here on the other side of this break. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? I think that everybody can say that at least once or twice or from time to time. Everybody kind of feels their own way about such things, especially around this time of the year. The kids are on spring break. It's time to start pulling out those, wallets and pocketbooks and purses and what's the new thing that the kids are doing with the phones and their tap, all of that. Everybody's accepting the money. So there's only one inevitable thing that can possibly happen, and that's that you're going to spend it. But the question is, where did it all go? Between all the dining out and all the online shopping and entertainment, it's just so easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you the full visibility and control over your finances. Feel like it's really hard to control those finances with a 2-year-old, but that's another conversation. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can go and track all your accounts, all your investments, and spending all in one place. So stop just, managing your money and start building your wealth. I'll tell you this much, instead of juggling through multiple apps, which is something that you could tend to happen, and then your phone's slowing down because you got all these apps on there and everything else, so on and so forth. You can use Monarch Money to check your finances, check your spending, and even plan long-term goals. And how about this? Easy to even collab in many instances where managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set your goals, stay all on the same page without the stress. Kind of sounds like a one-stop shop to me. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half of your first year. And then there's this. What other place to go and play some of these things? That is baseball season. Of course, it's in full swing. There is no better way to get in on all the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for your daily fantasy sports Everybody's doing it. Unless you've been living on a rock, you'd have no idea what I'm talking about. But since you're listening to this, let me introduce you. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Not 500 times, not 100 times, not 999 times, 1,000 times your cash, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. Gives you a little bit more incentive to make sure you're watching those games when your money is on the line for sure. This week, I don't know. I might just end up picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run or Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. It's just that easy. It's very fast. It's very simple. Setting up your lineup takes less than 60 seconds. And when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. So I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you once. I'll tell you again. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is, make sure you get your pen and paper out, Locked On NBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
I like to get into a little bit of the turning point segment with you guys because this is actually pretty fascinating in how the Atlanta Hawks ended up pulling the April Fool's joke on us on tonight. So, in talking about the Portland Trailblazers at the 9-minute 12-second mark in the third quarter, right? Score is 63-59. Of course, Kamara, who I think he's a former Georgia Bulldog now that I think about it. Actually pretty surprised to see him doing as well as he did in the league. Of course, courtesy of the Atlanta Hawks. It just had to be that way. Of course it is. Scoring 9 of those 20 points during that stretch on that run, where ultimately it turns into an 83-66 deficit that the Atlanta Hawks ended up going down after having it relatively close, being only down by 4 points. And during that stretch, Danny Avia has an and 1. The Atlanta Hawks turned the ball over. I think there was like a delay of game somewhere in that range, and also followed up by an Onyeka Okongwu turnover and by an Onyeka foul as well. Not playing very well, obviously, during that stretch. It looks like the Atlanta Hawks are going to go down. And it's like, I know my turning point for this game because I'm not super confident that the Atlanta Hawks are going to play well for the remainder of it. I know that we got really adjusted and accustomed to saying things along the lines of, keeping it competitive. And that just seems to be what their new motto is all of a sudden. End up losing games, but at least they were able to keep it close and things of that nature. However, it kind of went that way, and that was where we insert now the Atlanta Hawks, who just so happened to pull a trick on us. Because what did they do? Got everybody think they're coming back, they're going to win this game, and we knew that they were poised for a run. I don't think that'll probably surprise anybody. Atlanta in the fourth quarter, they go on a 16-7 run. The score is 97-84. All of a sudden, Terrence Mann gets an and 1. Trae Young hits a 3. He goes into the lane like he always does and penetrates towards the basket. Got the quick first step, get the guy on his hip, throw up the floater. He gets the teardrop, the and 1, all the good stuff, even converting on his free throws down the stretch, turning that 97-84 deficit into a 104-100 4-point deficit. And that's where I thought, okay, we probably got something to work with here, right? We cooking with some grease. But it's not until further on into the fourth quarter where as soon as that happens, the Portland Trailblazers go on a 16-5 run of their own. And that is ultimately what put the nail in the coffin. It's one thing to throw somebody in the coffin. It's a whole nother thing to make sure that you don't forget the screws and the nails. Yeah, they went ahead and grabbed the nails and the hammer and just pounded the coffin closed, if you will. A 16-5 fourth quarter run going from 104-100 Portland to 120-105 Portland. Up 15, and it just was a little bit too much. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about how the Atlanta Hawks finding a way to pretty much make it so that Portland got confident in that, first half. Something that they definitely couldn't afford. I don't know if the Hawks were sleepwalking. I don't know if they had something going on last night. I don't know if they were paying attention to something going on elsewhere, if it was a matter of travel or just whatever the case may have been. But it just didn't work out well for this team. And this didn't happen on the road, right, where they've been playing better. This happened at home where there's still far too many conversations about the Atlanta Hawks not being able to defend home court. That is what I ultimately think is going to do them in, no matter what seed that they have entering the play-in, to be able to position themselves to where they can be able to really contend for just about anything, but just to actually get into the playoffs alone. All that's still left to be said. But I think just the combination between Denny Avia and Shaedon Sharpe, 9 of those 16 points they're recorded for, they're scored during that stretch. And I don't think that helped them out by any stretch of the imagination, that is. I think that there are too many instances where we have those conversations about, who the random role player is, right? But also about other things that if you're not paying attention to really realize how really embarrassing this loss felt, if you've been really watching anything about the NBA or not seeing the Portland Trailblazers for a good reason, because they've been just that bad. I mean, the Detroit Pistons have come out from the grave before the Portland Trailblazers have. Probably to make matters worse, add insult to injury, I guess you can call it, adding fuel to the fire. Yeah, it's the little things that you'll be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
So how about this for our what you'll be talking about segment? So many guys, too many guys, key contributors didn't play tonight. Jeremy Grant, I think a one-time NBA All-Star. DeAndre Ayton, a number one player in one of the top 3, certainly no question, top 5 best draft classes ever in 2018, the one that, Trey and Luka was a part of, and all those guys, right? Jaren Jackson and so on and so forth. Number 1 pick DeAndre Ayton didn't play either. Who else is inactive? Scoot Henderson, a guy who was a lottery pick and a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, maybe 700 and something days ago, roughly, right? About 2 years ago. And then, of course, you got Anthony Simons, which now when you're starting to consider Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons, I don't even know who the hell the point guard is at that point in time, now that we're having that kind of a conversation. I mean, I guess on tonight, who was it? I mean, Denny Avia pretty much did just about any and everything that he wanted to tonight. They didn't even have a point guard and beat the Atlanta Hawks tonight. That's how embarrassing and how reasons behind why I'm so flustered behind this team, because you can't go out there and lose to a team that is losing 60 plus points of its scoring, 20 or more rebounds per game. On average, between those 4 players, averaging 44% from the field. What did the Portland Trailblazers average on tonight? Without their best players, some of the guys that scored the most points on the team, leading scorer, top draft picks, hardworking, grab your hard hat, construction hat, and your lunch pail guy, Jeremy Grant, losing those guys and not having those guys who average between each other 44% from the field. averaged 44% from the field on tonight, even without those guys. I think that is something that definitely needs to be brought up in the film session, because I'll be honest, of all of these teams that are going to be participating in that play-in spot for 7th in the East and then 8th in the East, I feel like the Atlanta Hawks is the team that's playing the worst out of all of them. The Orlando Magic, Miami has been hot. I think they've won 5 in a row after coming off of losing 10 consecutive. The Atlanta Hawks being part of that 5 in a row, by the way, should I add. And then, of course, you've got the Chicago Bulls, where at this point, anything can happen. We remember what happened last year when we played them in the play-in, found a way to end up playing them in Chicago, and things didn't go well there either behind Kobe White, who was one of the better 6 men of the year, or in contention for it anyways. Those are the things that I think need to be talked about. Those are the things that I will be talking about, and then I'll be keeping my eyes glued on for the remainder of the 7 games of the regular season before we start having real conversations about when it matters most, which will be win or go home. Let's talk a little bit more about the plus off the pine right here on the other side of the break. What time is it? It's game time. What other kind of time would it be? There's nothing like watching basketball live. Promise you there's nothing better than that. You know me. You know that watching basketball is something that's just a regular thing that happens in the Tate residence. It's the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sound of the gym shoes squeaking on the floors, right? Maybe even a celebrity sighting, perhaps courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, something I'll be looking forward to doing perhaps this weekend at the Final Four in San Antonio, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Trust me, I know exactly how easy it is. Just went and snagged some of mine, made it very simple, made it very easy. Game Time's new feature of Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats. So if you don't have to waste your time scrolling through thousands and thousands of tickets trying to find out exactly what the best thing is and all that, they simplify everything for you. All the super deals, Game Time Picks, even highlights of super deals that'll give you the best bang for your buck. It even gives you like the panoramic views of what your seat, you know, where what the court or the field looks like, perhaps from the seat that you're going to be purchasing, how far that view is from, you know, whatever sport is being played. There's no surprise fees and a lowest price guaranteed, where you can book with nothing but total confidence. I promise you, this is so easy and also simple. I just checked the Game Time app not long ago. There are amazing deals on some of the hugest matchups coming up. I just told you, I just snagged mine up for the Final Four. So what you can do is follow my lead, take my hand, don't walk behind me, walk with me and beside me, where you can take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, of course, terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? You guessed it. It's game time.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
This This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Yeah, this is it right here. Talk a little bit about our player of the game. And some people are going to say, oh, that's an easy one. Of course, it's got to be the guy with 29 points and 15 assists. But no. I'm going to roll with my dude, Vit Krejci, on this one. I say my dude because I've only been so embarrassed to call him number 99 for many years just because he was always Mr. Irrelevant to me. But he's making it so that you can't say that anymore. Maybe it seems like only 13 points to most people. I think 7 rebounds, right, is a huge deal, especially for a guard and coming off of the bench. You've got so many other bench players that tend to play really well. Obviously, you've seen that on tonight. The Atlanta Hawks bench outscored the Portland Trailblazers 41-22, pretty much just about almost doubled the amount that Portland put out there on the floor. Nonetheless, a big part of that because of Vit Krejci, 13.7 rebounds. Again, only 2 missed shots in this game and knocked down 3 3-pointers for the Atlanta Hawks. When we were talking about that big time stretch where they went on a 16-7 run, what was it, in the fourth quarter? Yeah, in the fourth quarter, correct. That, Vit Krejci have been able to put his hand in on that run as well. So, being able to be the guy when you still have Terrence Mann, who's healthy and he's playing, Karis LeVert, who's healthy and he's playing, Georges Niang, who's healthy and he's playing. Of all the people, it's Mr. Fearless himself, that being Vit Krejci. And the reason why I chose him over Trae Young on tonight is because it appears that everybody else was in the negatives. If you're one of those, I call them neeks and nerds and geeks, right? If I can even say it correctly. They got the minuses all across the board. And if you get into all of the, analytics and all the math part of it and crunching and breaking down all the numbers, -8 for Trae on tonight, -20 for Dyson Daniels on tonight, and -24 for Onyeka Okongwu on this evening, who, by the way, went 4 for 8. That's cool being 50% from the field. However, I think we're going to need him to get a little bit more than 8 shots. Vit Krejci was +6. And I thought that was really telling because I found out that it wasn't just necessarily about the scoring aspect, but the way that he played defense and stymied. And one of the few guys that I saw on tonight that appeared to be able to and took pride in the defensive side of the ball. Something I get it. We always see Dyson Daniels playing a really good brand of basketball on that side, but tonight was also Vit Krejci, who kind of frustrated a little bit of the opposition, and he's the reason that I have got them very clearly and very simple. Got him to be my player of the game. Appreciate everybody for joining us on tonight. Make sure that you come back and join us 24 hours from now. Of course, you will be able to get me and Tanisha to be able to give a little bit of a recap and give a little bit more so of a breakdown into this right here, what we got coming up next. I think this is the first time we're going to be talking about traveling to Dallas with no Luka Doncic and the whole nine. Tomorrow against the Dallas Mavericks, a little bit more of a banged up Dallas Mavericks team who hasn't been playing nearly as well. However, that's just the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes. 24 hours from now, make sure y'all go check out my dude, Brad Rowland, too. On the Locked On Hawks Postcast. Find it anywhere you find your favorite pods, the same way that you did here. Appreciate everybody for joining us on tonight. We'll see you in 24. Peace out. A-Town Down.